This is the Candid podcast. Welcome back to the podcast, and thanks for tuning in. In this episode, I'm going to discuss why men, particularly traditional men, don't want to date women with tattoos, body piercings, and brightly colored hair. This isn't a topic that's particularly hot or trending right now, but it is one that is pretty controversial whenever it's brought up or discussed, and I'm all about that controversy life, so I'm going to dive in on this one head first. We live in a world where now, more than ever, people are free to express themselves in whatever wild, bold, or off-the-wall way they want to, and it's no longer frowned upon, nor does it have near as much shock value as it used to 30 to 40 years ago. I mean, you literally have men walking around acting and pretending to be women, women walking around acting and pretending to be men, homosexual men exhibiting very feminine behavior and being outwardly flamboyant while wearing clothes that look like they work at a circus, women wearing skimpy bathing suits to the damn gym, and the list goes on and on and on. And while, yes, we may be more used to seeing these things now more than ever, that doesn't necessarily mean that everyone accepts or is okay with them. And the same thing goes with tattoos, piercings, and wildly colored hair. 30 to 40 years ago, tattoos had such a bad stigma behind them that they would very often prohibit the person who got them from being able to get any type of employment, let alone a job in corporate America. Some traditional families were even ready to kick a family member out the house and excommunicate them permanently, even over a small little tattoo on that person's wrist or ankle. For better or for worse, whether you agree with it or not, things have progressed vastly from those times, and at least in America, tattoos are just as common as seeing cars on the road and airplanes in the sky. It's just a part of our daily life. And while there are many jobs that may still have hiring practices that exclude people with tattoos and piercings, it's more common than ever to see people at meetings in corporate America that have visible tattoos on their arms. With that being said, when it comes to dating and choosing a partner to do life with, most traditional men do not like women who have tattoos, piercings, and wildly colored hair, and most men see them as short-term fun only. And while I do not agree with that mindset or behavior, I do agree that most women with tattoos and piercings just aren't suitable for a long-term relationship. And most women seem to get extremely upset at this statement, and they go all into rage mode, claiming that it's wrong to judge them based off of something like tattoos and piercings, that men who judge women like this are small-minded and weak men, and that just because a woman has a tattoo and piercings, that doesn't make her a bad person. Okay, well, I do agree with 1/3 of their statements, which is that just because a woman has tattoos and piercings, that doesn't make her a bad person. Fair point, and that's true. I'm sure there are some women out there with tats and piercings that are absolutely great people, but that still doesn't mean they're right for most traditional men. The other 2/3 of the women's argument is complete cap, for the simple fact that men are actually judging women on a conscious decision that they chose to make with their bodies, unlike most women out there who judge men based off of things like their height, race, hair loss, Johnson size, and net worth, almost all of which men literally have zero control over. So essentially, women are asking men not to judge them on the decisions they make while they have no problem judging men on things we have zero say in. Does that sound hypocritical to anyone, or is it just me? Well, either way, as usual, I don't care what women think. I'll do what I want to, so I'm going to list and break down a host of reasons why most traditional men want nothing to do with women who have tattoos, piercings, and wildly colored hair. Let's get into it. I'll lead off with social stereotypes and brand management. Even though, as I stated a few minutes ago, the stereotype of tattoos and piercings has changed in the last 30 to 40 years, there are still plenty of people and companies out there who do not accept them, and that could end up causing problems. I'll look at this point strictly from a job standpoint. With the economy being in its current laughable condition, even traditional values-based relationships usually call for both partners to work, even if the man is the one bringing home the bulk of the money and paying for most of the heavy bills. That's just the way it is now. Unless the man of the house is making well over $200K a year, it's damn near impossible to support a 4-person family on one person's income and have the man be the only one who brings home the bacon while the wife is the homemaker. With the woman of the house now needing to have a fairly decent job just for the family to get ahead, getting said job is going to be infinitely harder if she's walking around with a bunch of visible tattoos and piercings in areas that she can't cover up. I mean, sure, the woman may be able to get a job at Lowe's, Home Depot, or Walmart, making just above minimum wage, doing things like stocking the shelves or working the checkout. But if she's looking to make real money or possibly have a legit career where she can progress and advance, then I'm sorry, but those tattoos and piercings could severely hurt her job prospects depending on where the ink and piercings are located and what exactly you have tattooed on your body. Now you're putting a ton of extra stress on your husband to find a second job or constantly have to grind himself into dust because of a foolish decision that you made with zero forward thinking on how it would impact your life in other ways. More on that a bit later. But going back to a point I just made, it's also not just about the location of the tattoo, it's what the tattoo actually is. For example, there was some woman on TikTok that went viral a while ago because she was complaining that she felt like TJ Maxx rejected her application because of her appearance. This woman literally had piercings all on her face, a huge tattoo on her forehead, a spider tattoo on her neck, and a demonic tattoo of a goat head with a pentagram on his forehead, square in the middle of her chest. All visible and impossible to cover up without her wearing a turtleneck that covered her entire damn head. TJ Maxx as a brand has a standard that they've carefully crafted and built over many years, and I'm sure they felt that someone with this woman's appearance did not represent their brand properly, and therefore the company didn't want to go anywhere near her. She could be the sweetest person in the world, which I don't think she was, but the spider tattoo on her neck and the satanic goat on her chest kind of suggest otherwise. And stereotypically speaking, most customers are going to think the exact same thing when they encounter her, which is not the kind of experience TJ Maxx wants in their store. On top of that, the satanic goat right on her cleavage was distracting because of what it represented and the location, which just seems like a huge problem waiting to happen when this woman eventually starts accusing men of creeping on her by staring at her chest, and she sues the store for not doing more to protect her from incels. Everything about a woman like that fits the stereotypical mold of exactly what companies are trying to avoid to keep their brand family friendly, safe, and out of legal trouble. When you work for a company, you not only represent yourself, but you represent the company as well. And depending on where you got your ink and piercings and what they represent, many companies are gonna hard pass on a woman like this, which, as I stated earlier, puts more weight on the shoulders of the man of the family to hustle himself to death in order to make up for this woman's drastically reduced income earning potential. The next point I'll move on to is simply personal preference. A lot of traditional men just don't like women with tattoos, piercings, and wildly colored hair. I know it's probably a shock to everyone that not every single person walking the earth has the same likes and values. What? No way. Oh, yes way. And even more shockingly, tattoos and piercings fall into this same category. Mind blown. A good amount of traditional men, especially old school traditional men, just don't find tattoos and piercings on a woman appealing. Simple as that. A lot of men who think this way often don't have tattoos themselves, and they want women who look the same way. A lot of traditional men prefer to be with a woman who is pure, for lack of a better word, and that looks like she was born without anything else added to her. This is the same concept behind why most men don't like women who have gotten things like lip filler, BBLs, which is Brazilian butt lifts, fake boobs, Botox injections, plastic surgery, or any of these other ridiculous cosmetic procedures. It's a turnoff for most of us. And to be honest, some of us men find it distracting or look at it as an attempt to draw unnecessary attention to yourself. And we're just not into that kind of thing. Again, I get it. Some women get tattoos to commemorate a loved one that passed away, a tragic event, or sometimes to even cover up a scar from a bad accident or maybe from a surgery that she had to have. Nobody is saying that you're a horrible person for making that choice, just that we personally don't agree with that choice. So we choose to focus on women who have more of the kind of look that we're seeking in a partner. Just like I mentioned earlier, women judge men based off of things that are completely out of our control. But when we judge women based off of decisions they chose to make, then we get demonized for it. And that makes absolutely no sense to me whatsoever. And I really don't even like using the word judge here because it's not about judging someone at all. You're allowed to make whatever decision you want to make with your life. And I'm allowed to disagree with it and choose to move in a different direction. Simply put, most traditional men just prefer women who treat their bodies more traditionally like we do. Now, there are some men who are a bit looser on the traditional spectrum who are tatted up and like women with tats and piercings as well. So all hope is not lost. But that doesn't make us more conservative traditional men who feel differently wrong either. And this actually smoothly transitions me into my next reason why traditional men don't like women with tattoos and piercings, and that's religious reasons. Yep, I said it. And this one is definitely one of the more controversial reasons out of the group for sure. The fact of the matter is that most traditional conservative Christian men don't believe in tattoos for religious reasons. Now, this point has been argued and even routinely broken by many of Christians while they were claiming Christianity. Now, I do want to be clear that this is not the same thing as someone getting a tattoo before they turn Christian, which is completely different. In that case, the tattoo is already present, and there really isn't much that can be done about it outside of thousands of dollars in laser surgery and hours of pain. And those amounts could even be doubled or even quadrupled depending on how many tattoos the person has. What I'm talking about is an active Christian getting a tattoo or facial piercing. Like I said, this point is a hotly debated point, with some people who are looser on the Christianity spectrum feeling like getting a tattoo or a piercing isn't against God, while some argue that it is. Regardless, a lot of Christian men think very similarly to my previous point, and that they want a woman who is pure and looks just like God intended her to, and that getting something like a tattoo or a piercing goes against nature and what God intended for us to look like. To put this point into context, there's a Bible verse in Leviticus 19:28 that literally says, "You shall not make any cuts on your body for the dead or tattoo yourselves. I am the Lord." And I do realize that this verse has been debated to eternity because it's Old Testament and that we're under a new law with the New Testament. But from some men's perspective, it's not at all an ambiguous verse. Like when it comes to some other things in the Bible, like what a man should and shouldn't be doing in bed with his woman, which I'm not going to get into right now. That's a whole nother discussion. Either way, the verse plainly states no tattoos. So to some traditional men, anyone trying to find reasons, excuses, and twist scriptures to try and break that rule is not truly a Christian and is instead trying to find ways to go against what God intended in order to satisfy their own wants and needs. And that's a potentially very troubling sign. If you're willing to find reasons to break that commandment, if you will, then you're going to try to find ways to break other biblical principles, which is naturally going to leave a traditional Christian man wondering if the woman he's talking to is really a Christian at all. Now, I'm not going to go any deeper into this because I'm not trying to hold church and convict anyone or debate what I do and don't believe about what the old good book says, because that's not my intention at all. I'm just giving you one of the many reasons why traditional men don't like women with tattoos and piercings, and religious reasons is definitely one of them, so it needs to be represented here. Y'all don't go posting in my YouTube comments chastising me or trying to argue religion, because like I said, I'm not trying to get that deep into this point or have a religious debate on this. I'm done arguing with people in life overall. I'll believe what I want to, you do the same, and we can keep things at that. Moving on. The next one is a big one, and it's probably the point that's going to enrage women the most. It's kind of related to the personal preference point, but it's also a bit different. It's how tattoos affect a woman's appearance or perceived appearance. I'd bet my life savings that there's not one female walking this earth that hasn't heard this point about women and tattoos. And it's that they oftentimes make women look trashy. Sorry, ladies, but in many cases, this is indeed true. But I say this based on a few factors that don't include just having tattoos. I'm not referring to a woman who may have a small tattoo on the small of her back or a small tattoo on her ankle or wrist. Even the most traditional of men can usually overlook those because it's only one tattoo, and it's in a location that could sometimes even be considered cute for a woman. Which brings me to the first factor when it comes to tattoos making a woman look trashy, and that's how many of them she has. If a woman has a bunch of tattoos that look like she was lined up in front of a firing squad and lit up with firearms that shot tattoos, then that looks trashy. You have tattoos all over the place, And in most cases, none of them are related to each other, nor do they work well together. And I'm going to talk more about this later in a different point as well. It's just not a good look, especially when you can tell that the woman went to 6 different artists to get the tattoos done. The line work is shaky and bad, the colors don't match, and it looks like it was done with a needle and a hammer instead of the proper equipment. It just looks bad, and it severely detracts from your appearance rather than adding to it. Sticking with the trashy point, trashy to a lot of men also means easy, even if that's not actually the case. Being completely honest here, when most men see a woman tatted up with tons of piercings and they look trashy, these men automatically believe the woman's a freak or easy sexually. So that's how they approach her. If I'm a traditional man, I don't want to be seen with a woman giving off that kind of look because that doesn't represent how I am. And B, you're already going to have to deal with men approaching your woman if she's universally attractive. Now you got to deal with even scummier men approaching her incorrectly and talking to her crazy because they think she's an easy lay. And this is just yet another headache that most men don't want to have to deal with. Another factor here that contributes to the whole trashiness factor is tattoo location. I have routinely seen women get the old tried and true tiger claws on their bosoms, chest pieces all over their cleavage, leg tattoos, tramp stamps right above their butt cracks, and everyone's favorite neck tattoos. To almost every traditional man walking the earth, tattoos in those locations, and probably a few more that I forgot, really set off the trashy woman alarm when you see them. And they're a very clear signal to steer clear of said woman at all costs. And the same thing goes for piercings. Now, I'm not referring to ear piercings. I'm talking about face piercings through the lips, directly into your face, over your eyebrows, through your eyebrows, and every woman's new favorite piercing, which is the bull nose ring. I have no idea why women want to look like a cattle animal that someone thinks escaped from a ranch, but apparently that's what women think looks hot now. And real quick, here's a tip for women who have those nose rings. If a man walks up to you, grabs your arm, and starts lifting it up, he's not being creepy at all. He's checking to see where you're branded so he can get you back to your farmer. I joke. But my point does remain the same. It's just not a look that most men find attractive at all. If you like it, then cool. As I always say, you do you. But don't be surprised when good men start passing on you because you're doing things to yourself that we feel detract from your beauty. Tattoo size is another thing that contributes to the trashy factor here. As I said earlier, if a woman has 1 or 2 small tattoos in a select few locations, then some men can let that slide. But when women get these huge tattoos that cover large areas of their bodies, it's just not appealing to most men. At that point, the tattoo has moved away from being an accent piece to the rest of your body, and it's now become one huge focal point that usually ends up looking like a big, giant distraction. In my opinion, sleeves are a great example of this. Now, I will admit that a woman with one sleeve does look much better than a woman who made it out of the tattoo firing squad alive. But even if said sleeve is done really well, it still makes the woman look less attractive than if she just didn't get a tattoo at all. And it potentially sends the wrong message to others around her about how that woman really is. Again, I'm about to go deeper into this in a minute. My next factor doesn't necessarily relate to the trashy topic, but it does deal with this whole point on a woman's appearance, so I'm just gonna discuss it right here. For me personally, multiple tattoos on a woman make her look more rugged, which is a manly feature, and I don't like dudes. And to all the women who get upset about this, sorry, but it is what it is. You yourself routinely spout off about how much you love men with tattoos because they make dudes look manly and rugged. Well, answer this question for me. How can multiple tattoos make men look rugged and tough, but somehow make women look more feminine? The answer to that is that they don't, at least not in my opinion. Sure, there are some guys who find tattoos on a woman sexy, but again, most of those men are looking at that from a sexual standpoint because, as I've already stated, they think you're easy and a freak in bed. Bottom line here is that, at least in my opinion, women with multiple tattoos look more rough, dudeish, and manly. And for me, that's just a complete turnoff. Men are naturally rugged, have rough skin, and as we get older, defects on our skin don't age us nearly as bad as they do to women. So I don't understand why women think that getting these large or multiple tattoos are such a great idea. I guess everyone is different, but I want my woman to look as feminine as possible. I don't mind women who like getting dirty or doing physical things, but I still want her to be able to clean up at the end of the day and look like a lady again. My final factor when it comes to the appearance topic is really what I just mentioned, and it's that tattoos look like pure ass as you age. Again, especially on women. Look, we all want to stay young forever, but reality has a different opinion on that. All tattoos fade eventually as we age. And while in some instances, if a woman is really attractive and young, she may, and I said may, be able to pull off a tatted up and pierced up look for a while. But as she ages, I'm sorry, but the gig is up. All that stuff starts to turn to mush, and the woman ends up walking around looking completely ridiculous and sometimes downright goofy. And you, the man, are going to be forced to walk right next to her. No, thank you. I'll pass on that. I have no issue with my woman getting older and more wrinkled as we age because that's an accepted part of life. But what I can't deal with is walking around with someone looking 20 years older than they actually are and completely busted up because her once cool looking and trendy tattoos are dried up. On top of that, she's probably going to look like an even trashier woman than before because she's old with a bunch of unrecognizable and saggy looking ink blobs all over her skin. Now, I promise you, I'm not trying to be mean at all here, and I'm not bagging on people for getting old. I'm simply highlighting one of the many reasons why tattoos negatively affect a woman's appearance and why most traditional men just don't like them. And part of the final appearance factor that I just discussed provides yet another smooth transition into my last point on this entire subject, which is one of men's major reasons for not wanting to date women with tattoos and piercings. And it's because we view tattoos, piercings, and colored hair as a sign of impulsivity, poor judgment, and lack of foresight. Once again, ladies, I know you hate to hear this, but I'm sorry. In most cases, I have found this to be 100% true. Men value consistency, stability, and someone who makes decisions using rational thinking rather than impulsivity. Now, don't get me wrong. Spontaneity is always welcome in a relationship, especially when it comes to fun time. But it's not just limited to that scenario. And the fact of the matter is that being spontaneous is completely different from being impulsive. Us men want the former, not the latter. In the example that I used a few times already, women who look like they got blasted with tattoo guns by a firing squad are the shining example of the YOLO behavior that most women with tattoos exhibit. You put zero thought into where your tattoos were going to go, how they were going to work with the rest of your tattoos, or how they should be arranged so that they at least look decent. Nope, none of that. Whenever you got the urge to want another tattoo, you acted on your impulses and just got whatever came to your mind at the time and put it anywhere on your body that had a free spot because you lack restraint, foresight, and the ability to be patient and plan ahead. Same thing goes with the location of your tattoo. You meet some guy who you instantly fall in love with. So 2 months later, you decide to get his whole ass face tattooed on your neck, not giving any consideration to the fact that this relationship may not last. The fact that if you break up, most men will pass on you because you have another dude's face on your neck, or the fact that the tattoo is on your neck and how that will affect your future job prospects. Nope. Who cares? You're in love right now. So YOLO. Fast forward another month, and as expected, you and old boy are broken up, and now you're stuck with the tattoo of your ex on your neck that you're probably going to make even worse now by having to get a cover-up, which makes the tattoo even bigger and more glaring. This whole scenario is yet another example of a complete lack of foresight and extremely poor judgment. And men want nothing to do with a woman like that. Even if the tattoo on your neck is of Jesus dying on the cross for our sins, it's still on your neck, which aside from your face is one of the absolute worst places you could get a tattoo on your body if you ever want to get a decent job in life. A whole lot of you women out there refuse to think before you ink. And that's a major red flag to most traditional men looking for a stable, suitable partner. The same thing applies to piercings and dyeing your hair different colors. Getting piercings on your face, through your lip, through your nose, and other areas that are visible and can't be covered up is just a dumb idea in most men's opinion. And it demonstrates how a lot of women will throw away all logic and reason simply to do something that pleases them in the moment because it feels good or they want it, with zero regard for the long-term impact on your life. When it comes to coloring your hair, I have zero issues with a blonde woman getting darker highlights or the reverse. Or a woman who has gray hair and she wants to dye it back to her original color. That's completely acceptable because she's keeping her natural look and maybe just adding a few enhancements to it. But when women go off and start dyeing their entire hair pink, purple, green, red, blue, it's a major red flag that something is going on with that woman upstairs and that she might be a little bit cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. I could maybe see dyeing your hair pink in support of Breast Cancer Month if you or someone you love has been affected. But other than that, a woman dyeing her hair tons of different colors to most men demonstrates an impulsive and childlike mentality. That's what young teenage girls do. They dye their hair all kinds of colors and experiment because, well, they're young teenage girls. And contrary to popular female belief, most grown men don't like teenage girls, and we don't want a grown woman behaving like one either. So when we see you walking around with your colored hair, piercings, and your sassy ass attitudes, more on that in a minute, we see you as one big ass walking red flag who hasn't fully grown up yet or is acting acting out for some reason because you've got a bunch of trauma in your life, and we quickly scurry in the other direction. Or some men will try to use you for fun only because that's what your look represents. And I'm sure there are plenty of women out there now who are raging and upset, claiming that they're tatted up with bright orange hair and that they're not a bad person. And I'm sure that's true. I didn't say that you're bad people, just that most traditional men consider you bad for dating. Sorry, but if a woman is going to be cavalier, reckless, have zero foresight, use poor judgment, and be impulsive with her own body, then she most certainly would have no issues being the same way in our relationship with our finances, with our possessions, and possibly even with our kids. Now, don't go taking that last statement too far. I'm not saying that you'd be a danger to the kids, just that if you're living the YOLO life with yourself, then you're probably going to have the same attitude with everything else as well. Finances is a great example. I often see heavily tattooed women driving beater cars and complaining about lack of money, yet they're tatted and pierced up to the gills. Last time I checked, tattoos ain't cheap at all. You probably have thousands and thousands of dollars worth of tattoos on your body, yet you complain about your car or the rent or the price of oranges in Florida. Your car money is on your damn body, but you instead chose to be impulsive and spend it on ink and piercings just because you wanted it in the moment. Sorry, but nope. Marrying a woman like that would be a disaster, and I personally would be too damn worried about what other areas her impulsivity, poor judgment, and lack of foresight could crop up in our marriage. I'll leave that one right there. Make out of that statement whatever you will. Even though this last part may not exactly fall under impulsivity, poor judgment, and lack of foresight, I promised that I'd get back to it, so I gotta address it now before I finish up. Point blank, most women who have tattoos, piercings, and wildly colored hair are left-leaning, patriarchy-hating feminists with absolutely horrible attitudes, and they don't want traditional men anyway. Sorry, not sorry, but this is actually one of those stereotypes that is incredibly true. Back when I was on dating sites and apps, and hell, really even with people I've met in normal everyday life, 90% of the women rocking the tatted and pierced up look are the most liberal of liberal women, and they don't want a man unless he's going to bow down to her, let her lead, and allow her to run completely wild. They're the ones who are the my body, my choice type of women who champion women sleeping with 300 men a year. They're usually part of that community that shall not be named, and they're generally spoiled, whiny, Karen types of women who have a complete meltdown and try to get you fired from your job if you dare express any kind of opinion that differs from theirs. Only the simpiest of simp men would even dare go near these kinds of spoiled, entitled harpies, and they only do that because they're so desperate to be in any kind of relationship that they'll take whatever the hell they can get. Once again, I'm not saying that all women with this kind of look are this way, but I kid you not, 90% of the ones that I've encountered are. It's gotten to the point where you can spot one with blue hair, trashy tattoos, and her gut sticking out from under her shirt, and you instantly know what she's all about. All you have to do is wait for her to open her mouth and speak in order to confirm your suspicions as being correct. Look, it's a free country, so as always, you do you. But no man who's even 50% traditional is going to go anywhere near a woman like that because of all the attitude, sass, entitlement, lack of accountability, and downright BS drama that comes along with her. Bottom line is that the tattoos and piercings on a woman are just like those poisonous frogs that change colors as a warning sign that you need to back the hell up, or else you're about to be in for a really bad day. Heed those warning signs, fellas. These women were kind enough to make them very visible to us, so you have absolutely no excuses if you overlook them and end up in a situation that you regret. And that pretty much wraps this one up. As with any of my podcasts on the subject, I am not saying that all women who have tattoos and piercings act a certain way or have a certain attitude, but most of them definitely follow a certain pattern of behavior, and that's why most traditional men avoid them at all costs. Even if some of these women are the sweetest people in the world, which really can be the case sometimes, unfortunately, the fact that a woman has even one tattoo is a turnoff for us due to some of the reasons that I've already discussed. Like I said, women judge men in dating based on things that we can't control. So you all have absolutely no right getting upset at us men for judging you based on things that you can control or decisions that you've made in your lives. The fact of the matter is that a man being short or balding or black or white has zero bearing on the type of person he is or how he'll be as a partner. But a woman who shows signs of impulsivity, poor judgment, and lack of foresight with decisions made on her own body, in most traditional men's opinion here, is a huge red flag that this woman is probably not suitable for long-term dating. Women need to start understanding and getting used to the fact that while, yes, this is a free world, and you can do whatever you want to, your actions still come with consequences, even though sometimes those consequences may be unintentional. Bottom line is that if you choose not to think before you ink and you go down the YOLO path in life, don't be surprised if you have an extremely hard time finding a man with traditional values who actually wants to date you seriously. But look at the bright side, ladies. Us men are still looking for a way to get taller, not lose our hair, extend our Johnson size, get genetics like Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, and have a large pot of gold delivered to our front door free of charge, leprechaun not included. So you're all still doing a hell of a lot better than we are. As always, if you're listening in on YouTube, I appreciate a like, a subscribe, or you leaving a comment. I'm continuing to try to bring you great content, and I hope that you enjoy the kind of podcast that I'm bringing to you. Thanks for listening in. I will catch you on the next one.